It now gives me great pleasure to introduce contestant number 6 today. He is a group leader at his school, a member of the senior debating team, captain of his house debating team, has played for the senior badminton team, and is a passionate supporter of rugby. That's 2 badminton players. It's not like a common sport. From New Plymouth Boys High School, please welcome Sebastian Eastment with Our People, My People.
What is the most important thing in the world? It is people. It is people. It is people. On Anzac Day, we remember the people involved in war and conflicts over the years. How do we remember? How do we show our respect for our people? Many of us gather at war memorials throughout the nation. We crane our necks to see the noble rows of ex-servicemen. We are humbled by their dignity, awed by their comradeship. Like a twitch upon a thread, the training and disciplines of service are back in the angle of their jaw and their salute. Their eyes see images in the flutter of a flag that we cannot see. Images of battles many years ago in Africa, Europe, and the Pacific, then in Korea and Vietnam, and more recently in Bosnia, Timor, and Afghanistan. Many who attend these services often wear the medals of their deceased loved ones, sometimes on the wrong side of their jacket, but always with honour and pride for their loved ones. Today, I am not wearing my father's medal, but 40 years ago, my dad said goodbye to his basketball team. He was farewelled by his workmates. He purchased a burger at the Frankton takeaway and waited, shivering and surly, for the train to take him to Waiouru for compulsory military training. Today, he doesn't hear too well. Standing beside 5.5 cannon did some damage to the old lugs. As we remember our people, how many of us actually know their stories? How many are from families like mine, where war stories were not shared? My grandfathers and uncles were stoic and silent, hardly ever speaking a word of what they had been through, up until it was time for them to join their fallen comrades. We must respect their decision to remain silent. Remembrance begins with respect. But we must discover their stories, and we must continue to remember them in the generations to come. So how do we do this? Well, it starts at your local high school. Studying history provides us with the tools to go out and find these stories. My history teacher has given me the gift of discovery, and I've enjoyed using it to explore the wartime experiences of my people. My grandfather was wearing the uniform I'm in now at the outbreak of the Second World War. By 1940, he was head boy, and his fellow students' future was very different to what appears to be ahead of us. Today, our head boy has many doors open to him: professional sport, university, overseas travel. In 1940, it was Army, Navy, or Air Force, destination, front line. And it was by studying the Battle of Crete and being taught how to use the Kippenberg Research Centre at Waiouru that I discovered the story of my great-uncle Reg. All that was known about Reg was that he had volunteered at the outbreak of the war. He was captured in Europe, hospitalised in England, and wasn't well enough to return to New Zealand for 2 more years. The man who came home was stooped and thin, with ghastly weeping scars encircling his legs. He settled as a farmer and later drove big rigs. He didn't like traffic cops and couldn't stand being near peaches. He died in 1980, rarely speaking a word of what he had been through. So what had he been through? Well, at the Research Centre in Waiouru is a well-thumbed, leather-bound volume listing all the names of the prisoners of war. And there he is, Private Reginald Aylett, prisoner, captured in Crete, transported to Lambsdorff Stalag 344. By exploring other resources in the library, I discovered that Reg was a diesel engineer. His nickname was Aussie, and that during the evacuation of Crete, he nursed the final Bren carrier over the mountains, picking up those who could go no further. Conditions on Crete for those left behind were miserable. Food and water were scarce. They foraged for fruit, often peaches, and there were flies and dysentery from the rotting bodies. His journey to Germany would have been awful, transported in cattle trucks without any basic comforts. Lambsdorff was one of the largest prisons. It was crowded, the concrete floors were damp, the winters were bitter, and soldiers of Reg's rank were forced to work in coal mines, digging fuel for the German war machine. And there were lice and bed bugs. However, Lambsdorff did have one redeeming feature: its hospital. Without it, more men would have died of dysentery, typhus, and infection. As the war came to an end, the suffering increased. There were grueling marches, near starvation, more typhus, and even more madness. And Uncle Reg survived it all, but not to tell his tale. So now, when I see a memorial or I hear the last post, I will remember my people and I will tell their story.